that's a real blue blood in the soccer world.
Yeah,
And
well,
then St. Kitts and Nevis, that's another blue blood that they played. But 18-0 between two games. Um, I just had to put that out there because I think that's just crazy that you have a goal
is
difference of 18
yeah.
goals in two games, regardless of who you play. But also putting it out there that Malik Jakupovic scored 5 goals and had 1 assist against St. Kitts. I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, no American
Yeah,
has ever done that I know of. But is this really anything to write home about? Obviously, no, because it's the U17 CONCACAF Gold Cup qualifiers or whatever it is, and these two teams. This is not a measuring stick. This doesn't move the needle for anything. Now, if they did this against a France or a Spain, sure, we could start talking about that. But no, I just think it's good to give them a little bit of a spotlight because I know most people won't. But to just give these U.S. youth teams and a lot of these U.S. youth teams, if we're being completely honest, have some really good prospects in it. It's got to be one of the deepest teams that has ever happened for the U.S. Maybe I'm wrong from like the early 2000s and late 90s,
yeah.
maybe. But looking at these U.S. youth teams, in recent times they've been qualifying for the Olympics, making some deeper runs in terms of the World Cups. But no, there's some really good youth prospects, and I will say this: we'll probably touch on them maybe a little bit later in the week. But Matthias Albert was on the first team with Dortmund this week. Did not play, but was on the bench. But if this guy plays one single minute at all this year, he will have made his debut for Dortmund quicker than Christian Pulisic did with Borussia Dortmund. So that is just something to keep an eye out for. But no, there's a lot of U.S. youth prospects that are really starting to come into their own and start funneling their ways into these top European leagues.
And I think to our point that we made earlier, earlier in our revamp here on the Inside the Game, we talked about that next generation of U.S. players that are coming up. Albert certainly a part of that. That really might flip the switch for U.S. soccer. Is it something to get completely hyped about that they scored as many goals as they did in those games? No, because again, the sides that they're playing are not, household names in the game. It's still cool to see. It's cool to see a lopsided number for a U.S. team. But I think the bigger sign, to your point, Ryan, is the qualifying for the Olympics, is competing against the top end sides like the Germanys of the world that we've seen and the Italies that they've beaten and that they've competed with. And Albert's certainly another name on that list, and to be at that highest level is certainly something really impressive for him. But I think the point that we always circle back to, and I think we could loop this into the larger conversation, is that the U.S. really. I've talked about how CONCACAF is designed to see Americans succeed. And that continues to be the case. I mean, the entire point of CONCACAF, the way that it was built, the way that it was structured, and specifically some of their most recent decisions, is designed around the U.S. succeeding within it. And so I think we're kind of getting to that point in our development right now where we're winning a lot inside of CONCACAF, whether that be our senior team, especially our youth team can certainly win inside of CONCACAF. But how does that impact us when we meet up for some of these bigger world meetings with the bigger sides? Our youth teams have shown that they can compete in those games. Now we just need the senior team to catch up. And really, like we said, this lead up to the World Cup is going to show us a lot because we're finally going to get to see the senior team play those heavy hitting sides. We see the youth national teams match up against them. They've obviously been competitive. They've done well. I hate Morocco. Again, like I said, I never want to see another U.S. soccer team play Morocco ever again for the rest of my life because they just find a way to beat us. They have a formula for it. But outside of that, that's really going to give us a better look at the senior squad. But no, this younger group of U.S. prospects is certainly something to keep an eye on. They're just they're a fun group, and I know we've talked about a few of them.
No, they're a very, very fun group, and I think it's important that these groups come together. Look, everyone on these U.S. U17, U21, U23 teams, majority of them will not play with each other on
Yeah.
the senior team. That's just the reality of it, and that's just the truth. But at the same time, is you are getting these guys a little bit cohesiveness with each other as a team, and eventually some of those players will eventually trickle into the senior team. We've seen that time and time again, but a majority won't play with each other, and a couple will flame out and eventually we'll never see again. But a couple of these players will ultimately kind of get that it's kind of the word I'm looking for. The honor and like they'll start to care about playing for the crest, playing for the U.S. men's national team, and I think that's where it all starts is representing your national team on a youth level. We see it all the time with hockey, and we see it all at the World
Yeah.
Juniors. We see it all over the place in terms of a whole bunch of different sports. The only sport you don't see that in is football because, well, we don't. No one else plays football in the world besides us, really. But no, that's
Japan.
yeah, Japan. They're a really good football nation, that's for sure.
Um,
But
the
no, it's
comparison I'll make, it's a much smaller sample size, but it almost kind of in a way reminds me a little bit of something like hockey, Ryan, because we can beat Canada somewhat consistently at the younger youth levels. But when you get to the senior levels, Sweden is filled with guys that will probably make long NHL careers, if not make the Hall of Fame. Canada is just every line is just Hall of Famers. Speaking of, I mean, obviously we got the Winter Olympics, U.S. men's national team. They got their games coming up here. That tournament set to begin, but just lines of Hall of Famers. Even Russia, if they were allowed to compete, I saw a projection of what
U.S. beat Canada last year.
their roster would be. I get it, but not in the final. But either way, you know, they routinely find a way to choke in those big games. They haven't won a gold medal since that 1980 game against Finland after the Miracle on Ice. That's the last time they've done it. So at the youth levels, yeah, we're competing with everybody. But you get to that big game with the senior team, you just can't get it done. So again, a much smaller sample size. Obviously, soccer and hockey are two different worlds, and I'm not directly comparing the two, but that's what I mean. You know, we're seeing our youth sides go out and compete with the Germanys and the Italys, but what does our senior team needs to catch up in that regard?
I mean, I will say this though. I mean, there's fewer nations in terms of hockey. We're basically like the England of soccer. You know, we just kind of are there, and we just can't get it done. I mean, we've been in the silver medal match, and also we haven't had the NHL players in a while, in a handful of years. So I mean, that's a little bit different of having. Who are we sending over there? Just college kids, amateurs?
Yeah, some of the best amateurs in that we had. Which I mean, so that's what it used to be before 1980. 1980 was kind of the year that changed that. They started allowing NHL players to go. USSR was a little bit different. But anyways, go ahead.
But what were we doing before that? Weren't we just kind of like, I feel like this is the first time in a while we've had, you know, some of
I think 2014, 2010 was the last time NHL players went. I don't know if it was. I don't know. There's something to do with the NHL. Maybe some sort of
go over
agreement. Yeah, but it's weird how some years they do and some years they don't. Like it doesn't. But it also depends, I think, more on the country too, because I think there were certain countries that did send NHL players or professionals. Yeah, to be completely honest with you, I'm not sure. I'm just happy that they're back in it because it makes every game that much more entertaining. But yeah, I mean, so before we wrap up this conversation, you know, you were talking about the other day, and I saw you had made a video on it. And you make so many videos. Your efficiency with churning out the videos is impressive, man. It's like a conveyor belt. So sometimes I'll miss one or two of them. But you were talking about the other day about the guaranteed bids, 6 guaranteed bids in CONCACAF, how the U.S. should never miss a World Cup moving forward. Yeah, I mean, I had made reference to how it's kind of crafted around American success, but I feel like that kind of takes that conversation to a new level when you talk about 6 guaranteed spots.
Yeah, there's, in terms of making it success for the U.S., in terms of CONCACAF doing that, the success is set up for 2 nations, USA and Mexico. That's all it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe
Canada.
a Panama once every decade or so. Maybe a Jamaica sneaks in there. Maybe a Canada sneaks in there. But it's really just set up for the U.S. and Mexico. That's all it is. And these 6 automatic bids will. Again, this is what happens when you expand the field of the World Cup. You're going to get worse teams in the tournament, and we're not going to have as many games. So for the people that are going to start complaining, well, we haven't had had these many great games and everything. Well, when you expand the field, this is what happens. Shout out the college football playoff, and shout out the NFL playoffs. That's just the way it is. And basically, we got to be the top 6 team in CONCACAF. So you're telling me we have to be better than either one of Mexico, Canada, Panama, Jamaica, Honduras, and I can't even think of another team that's like kind of Costa Rica. I mean, Costa Rica used to be good, but
Yeah.
not really good anymore. But that's
Mm-hmm.
who we got to be better than. If they fail to make a World Cup in terms of that, like in the foreseeable future,
Yeah.
just don't play the game of soccer. If we fail to make a World Cup in the next like 30 years, just don't play the game of soccer. Let's just quit.
Yeah.
Let's just cut our
Yeah.
losses. No more
Yep.
Inside the Game podcast. Just cut it. Just stop playing the game of soccer. Like if we
Something.
fail to make a
Yeah.
World Cup in the next 30 years, just don't play the game of soccer. Like it makes
Yeah.
sense if we were competing in Europe or South America, yeah, and we failed to make a World Cup, like sure, that's fine because there's so many better nations than us. And that's why also when I hear like, oh, the U.S. is in the top 15 in the world rankings, well, look who we've played. Like, it's like the
Yeah.
Patriots in the Super Bowl. Look who you played to get there. Like,
Yeah.
that's not really impressive until you start beating these nations on a consistent basis. Yeah, then I can start taking some effect into that. But no, if we should make the World Cup for the foreseeable future, for like the rest of the time, we should be making the World Cup, unless some crazy thing happens with our U.S. men's national team. But it's like, if you fail to make the World Cup, all we have to be is a top 6 CONCACAF team. I mean, bro, just stop playing. Just stop. Like, it's a joke. If you fail to make it, it's a joke. And after 2018, which I will always say, failing to make 2018, it's a blessing in disguise because all of a sudden we had to realize that our way isn't working and we might actually have to rely on other ways of thinking to get this thing done. And all of a sudden, what'd you see after 2018? What'd you see? All these Americans start going overseas and playing. Pulisic, McKennie, Adams,
Mm-hmm.
Aronson, Matt Turner technically, and Chris Richards. And all of a sudden we have all these youth prospects that are being bought by MLS teams or bought by European teams from the MLS going over there. Yeah, that's massive. But if we fail to make the World Cup in this format, jeez, just wrap it. We're cooked.
No, and I don't think we will, and I think it's because of the willingness to embrace the European game and to continue to send players overseas, and allow them to develop in those schools of thought. You know, I don't pay that much attention to Mexican football, or soccer, mostly because the only time I really care about Mexico is when they play the United States. Like that's really the only time that I'm kind of locked into what's going on with their national team and how they've looked.
Flop, so.
Well, exactly that, but that's so they're kind of hindering their growth in a lot of ways, and even some of their other top end players they won't let leave Liga MX. I mean, they're very guarded in who they have, and I think there's this fierce competition as to who can be the next one to discover the next great talent. They have issues when it comes to transparency and fluency and sending those players overseas and allowing them to develop because they want to keep them in Mexico. And the hard part is when you do that, you hinder their growth. I mean, what have we talked about? Even a player like Diego Luna, like, yeah, I mean, I love that the kid's in the MLS. I love that he's playing here in the United States, but he needs to go to Europe. And a lot of these bubble players, if you get a chance to go to Europe and play significant minutes and learn from that school of thought and be around those players and be in that environment, you take that opportunity. So I understand that there's this overwhelming sense of pride for Americans in general that we want to do things our way. We want to do things our way. We want our guys. We want to recruit. We want to build off of what we have here. Do it our way. There is no our way. Like there is no our way. No, there isn't. So they go over there and they learn and they bring back what they learn to our shores. We get coaches from over there. We get other influential faces and people that have worked in those environments that lead leagues like the USL. Like there is none. I realize we've played that game in the United States for a long time. Again, it's what football was born from, a mix of soccer and rugby and kind of everything mixed in one eventually is what American football came from. But there is no our way. And so I think the U.S., more than a lot of places, and maybe because they have the means to do so, has embraced that more than I would say places like Mexico. I don't know about Canada. Frankly, I don't really pay attention to it. They all play hockey up there anyways, as we just talked about.
And basketball now. Even though,
and basketball, that's true.
Majority suck.
They're breaking in. I would say they're I don't know if they're top 5 in the
Hey,
world.
when
They
you
might
have
be
a
top
men's
5 in the
national
world,
team
but
for a basketball team with Trey Lyles on it, yeah, you suck.
RJ Barrett, the chosen one. But yeah, I don't know. I think
I don't
there's
mind
been a
RJ.
willingness from US soccer to kind of embrace the European model, to send our kids over there younger, to our prospects over there younger, to embrace the coaching style. I mean, how many coaches have we talked to on the show that have an accent? They're not from here. They were born somewhere else. They came up at a different school of thought, and then they moved to the United States, and they saw what it was a couple of decades ago, and then now what it is now, which is something completely different. But a lot of that formed and crafted by the European game. So again, as much as the sense of pride that I have as an American wants to be like, no, they had no impact, we're doing it our way and we're going to win it our way, there is no our way. There is no our way. And so we have to be willing and open to accept different schools of thought. Now, can you create a culture? Absolutely, you can create a culture, but culture and style are two different things. You can have your own style. You can have a mix of styles, but culture is a completely separate conversation. That more comes down to, different things within the clubhouse and different things within US soccer in general, which, speaking of the younger kids, I feel like they have that. I feel like they kind of have that mentality, that kind of, F you, grind it out, get in your
Yep.
chest, get up the field. Like that's what I like out of the kids. So culture and style are two different things, but the style part has been in large part formed by what we've seen from the international influence, not necessarily what we have or what we had already on our shores, So
Yeah,
anyways,
I would
just the
agree.
way I
And
see things.
speaking of European soccer, Nate, why don't you tell us about Bayern Munich soccer
Yeah,
camps?
we're a little bit over, aren't we?